الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله.
Assalamu alaikum. Just before we start, a few disclaimers or just introduction. So, how this topic came to be is we were just trying to understand this idea of living with belief, what it meant, and just reading part of Nursi's text on this about worship. We ran across a part of the text that we saw resonated with us, or maybe saw that maybe we were ignoring it, and we need to now focus more on it and develop this understanding. And of course, since we're trying to develop our understanding, a lot of it it required a lot of digging and understanding. And even for me, as I try to write it, I tried to write what I was convinced about it. I'd still be vague and realize it might not be comprehensive. So, inshallah, together we will try to understand what's happening. And before we start, just to start on a light note, Esau saw this title, "Can Worship Be a Tool to Live with Belief?" And he was sitting next to me. He said, "Nope," very, very confidently. So it wasn't encouraging, but inshallah, we will try our best.
So maybe I should also start with a few disclaimers. So it was 3 years ago. I was attending a retreat, and in that retreat, I heard the word surrender so many times that I was overwhelmed in the negative sense of the word. And this topic is somewhat going to be about submitting or surrendering. So I hope that I'm not going to, or we are not going to make you get overwhelmed with it. So one thing that I get from that discussion at the time 3 years ago was, I guess it was important to tell what you mean and what you do not mean. So in that presentation, for example, I was just taking it in a certain way. Maybe the presenters was not expressing what I was understanding, but at the end of the day, I was taking it in a certain way and saying that, well, it doesn't make sense to talk about surrendering without doing this and that. Not that they meant you shouldn't be understanding the topic first, but this is how I was getting it. So because of this, maybe we should start what we assume where we are, first of all. So this discussion we started with while we were studying. Actually, Abdurrahman came across a text at the sort of conclusion part of the text of Risale, which talks about nature. And in that Risale, the setup is this person is having questions about existence, whatever. So Nursi is in there talking about why things cannot happen by themselves, why not by nature, this and that, and eventually says that, or makes the reader conclude that yes, everything at every single moment must be given existence. Right after arriving to this conclusion, then pops up a question at the conclusion part of the text and says that, okay, yeah, I concluded that God exists, but what is it that he is asking for worshiping? What's the point? And it's such an insignificant thing, and as if in his speech, he talks that if you don't do this, he's threatening me with hell, like as if I am doing a huge crime. So this was the context that we started with. Over time, it changed. The course has changed. The main core of this discussion is not going to be that one, but this is how it started. So in this sense, in order to really talk about worshiping, there has to be some sort of an understanding of there must exist a creator, because without arriving to such a conclusion, truly there's no point of discussing whom am I going to worship, why shall I worship anyways. But once, because last year when we were discussing what should be the topic or the theme of next year's presentation, retreat, people commonly said that, how do we live with belief? And the people that came up with this question were people who are attending discussions at least once a week, maybe 3-5 times a week. So those people are having some sort of a conclusion, but still there was something missing in their lives, in my life as well. So what is it that is missing in my life that belief, although it really enlightens my worldview, but once the discussion finishes, maybe one day later, I start coming back to my routine and not being able to observe the life as I would like to observe it. So what do we understand from living with belief? Faraz was saying that it's not something that added on top of, so I will just expand a little bit more on that. So living with belief, let's say in our discussions, what do? We say that we arrive to a conclusion, so much so that this water, when I drink, the water molecule follows or being guided up until it reaches my eye or my hair, wherever it goes. So this much of a guiding is out there. So he is the one that moves this water molecule. I am so much convinced about this during the discussion. But when it comes to drinking water, after the discussion, I am still usual use of myself, and I drink water, and it just goes away. And I said that, how is it going to happen that when drinking water, I'm going to remember my Creator? When, may God protect, if, let's say, I crash my car, how am I going to remember my Creator? So on and so forth. Like in life, how am I going to benefit from my belief? Other than only during the discussions or right after discussions. And an answer to this one, to me, shouldn't exclusively consist of, well, brother, you should attend more discussions. Well, I already attended quite a number of them, and still I'm asking these questions. So as if I'm using a pill, and somewhat it improves my health, and I go and ask the doctor, well, it didn't solve my problem. And he says, use more of it. I use it for 3 months, 5 months, a year, 2 years. And he says, no, keep using it. It's going to solve your problems. So after a point, it becomes like, what's going on in here? So is it really, what am I going is right? So this was our question. We said that, what might be missing there? Or is it something missing in there? So in this sense, living with belief is, how am I going to benefit from my conclusions for the rest of my life, not only during the discussions. Let's go to the next slide. Oh yeah. So again, this was, Faraz made a nice introduction about this. This is from Surah Maryam. ما كان لله أن يتخذ من ولد سبحانه إذا قضى أمرا فإنما يقول له كن فيكون. So in Faraz's presentation, there was this conversation between Maryam and the Spirit, saying that Maryam was unhappy with, let's say, the baby in her belly. But Spirit said, قُضِيَ الْأَمْرِ, it's done, it's sealed deal. The command is done. You do not have a choice over that. And in following verses, a few verses down the road, it's the first 35th verse, it is not for Allah to have a child, glory be to him. When he decrees a thing, he says to it, be, and it is. So at the beginning part of that story, or if you take it as your own story, we are being introduced with the idea of things are happening to me out of my choice. I find myself in this environment. And now in verse 35, as if the concept is being summarized in the sense that be and it is, actually. This is not only happening to you. The whole creation, the whole existence is nothing but a command. So, of course, it requires some time to further study what kun fayakun means. But in a very nutshell, as far as I understand the topic, kun fayakun means observing the existence as the choice, because it comes into being with a choice. And I do observe that things are coming into existence within an order, which is showing that there is knowledge being involved. And then definitely it's a manifestation of power. So the existence is nothing but this kun fayakun. So very good. In theory, understanding this is very nice. But how do I carry this kun fayakun, the command of kun fayakun, such an understanding into 24/7 of my life, or more frequently than when I'm attending discussions? And this theme is going to repeat throughout the discussion. There are going to be a lot of repetitions, but apparently it's necessary. So this verse from Surah Baqarah is now at the very heart of our discussion. So this is verses 21 and 22. And 21 is, يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O mankind, worship your sustainer who has created you and those who lived before you so that you might remain conscious of him. And 22nd, الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم فلا تجعلوا لله أندادا وأنتم تعلمون. So this is a continuation from the previous verse. Who has made the earth a resting place for you and the sky a canopy and has sent down water from the sky and thereby brought forth fruits for your sustenance. Do not then claim that there is any power that could rival, ascribe partners to him, although you know that he is one, or although you know. So this verse is interesting in the sense that the last part of the first verse, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you become God conscious. How is that related to our topic? To the best of our understanding now, this taqwa, God consciousness, is actually what we are looking for. I want to be conscious of my maker for the rest of my life. Because my maker means that I am concerned about what am I doing in here, how did I end up in here, where am I going? And taking a shortcut, the answer to all those questions are my maker. I have a maker, I am being given existence by an absolute source. So in a nutshell, this is going to be the answer to all my questions. And I'm assuming that all previous discussions that we have was covering this, so we are not getting into that for now. But this verse is saying that if you would like to attain to this, in our context, if you would like to attain to live with your belief, benefit from your belief, if you like, in the rest of your life, u'budu, worship. And in between the two words, there's a description. So worship to whom? رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. So do worship to the one who created you and the ones that before you. And also in the beginning of the second part of the second verse says, gives further description. He is the one that sends down the water, brings food from earth, so on and so forth. So I'm skipping these parts because this is the part that makes me arrive to the conclusion that I have an absolute source that gives me existence. But again, the end of the second part, the second verse, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. This is an interesting part. It says, although you know all of these, you know that he is the one that gives existence to you, although you know that he is the one that sends down the water, brings forth the food, whatnot, it looks like as if still it is possible to ascribe partners to my creator, although I am somewhat convinced about all the ones that are listed before. And this is actually who I am. Because in my life, I am pretty much convinced that he is the giver of water. He is the one that creates me in the work environment that I am today working. He is the one who is controlling my advisor yelling at me at workspace, for example. But still, when my advisor yells at me, I take it very personal. And just, there is no God in that picture anywhere. And I am being very much under stress and everything. Like, my belief doesn't help me right there. And this is what this verse is to me saying. It is saying that although you know all of these, it might be that still you are going to ascribe partners to your creator, meaning that you are going to take this insult, for example, from your advisor, rather than seeing some sort of a meaning, wisdom, whatever, in that instance. So the question is, then how am I going to live with God consciousness so that I'm not going to ascribe partners to the maker, to the source, so that I'm going to live peacefully? And apparently the solution that is being suggested in here is u'budu, worship. What is worship?
I'm sorry. Could you clarify how come you do not accept a created being's insults is a kind of rival to God? I didn't.
So let's say such a thing happens,
Mhm.
and in my perception it is like bad. It doesn't mean anything. Some arrogant person yelling at me as if for his presentation he was saying that I just don't want to get close to it, or I want to be forgotten. I don't want to accept such a thing. To me it is something to be escaped from. I don't want to attribute, or I don't even try to see any meaning in it. Like, for example, in my personal life, there are things that happened, and truly I'm finding too hard time to see meaning in it. Like, why did this meaningless, stupid thing happen, really? And when I start thinking about it, I start having those fights within me, as if I am imagining this person next to me, and I'm saying that, yeah, that person will respond to me with this, and I'm going to respond with that, so just the fight carries on, and it doesn't take me anywhere. And to me, it's like a wound inside me, and it keeps burning me and not taking me anywhere. So it should be, although based on, let's say, our discussions in theory, this person misbehaving to me should have some sort of a meaning, though. I mean, it shouldn't be something that I want to get rid of.
So, when I am disappointed by this person tells me I was expecting and hoping goodness from them. That's why they're rival to create. If I wasn't expecting from them, I wouldn't be disappointed with them or angry with them. So, just I wanted to say that. You don't see the meaning. So what's the problem with it? The problem is I'm expecting meaning. So I'm expecting good behavior or kindness, for example, from my mother, from my father, from the teacher. Although I believe God, like you said, who I expect kindness and niceness from is my advisor. That's why when she insults me, I cannot help but be upset with her. And that should give me a problem, like why? Yeah, so I did expect her to be nice to me, it seems. Right? Is that... Yeah.
So then, since the verse is saying that worship is your cure, then, but what is worship? This becomes a secondary, or now our primary concern becomes worship, because it looks like verse is saying that if you would like to live with belief, then do worship. But what is worship? So this description we took from again Nursi. He says that worship is following commands and avoiding what is forbidden. So if you would like to make it more controversial, obeying commands and avoiding what's forbidden. So, but what is command? What does it mean to obey a command? So we came up with two clear descriptions for commands, two types of commands. One is there are commands in this existence. For example, I cannot drink, mercury. I have to drink water. So I'm not given an option not to drink water. And also, I am commanded not to drink mercury. So within your own risk, try just going against this command and see what will happen. Immediately, you're going to be punished, right? So this is one aspect. But our question was, how am I going to see drinking water as worship anyways? So if the response should be, brother, you should see drinking water as a worship, yeah, this is what I was looking for anyways. If Quran says, try to see drinking water as worship, I would say, no, it becomes cyclical. It doesn't take me anywhere, because I was looking for, how am I going to drink water with this consciousness? And you say that you should drink water with the consciousness of it being, it doesn't work. So the second type of command is, the Creator is also, like, we talked about the necessity of divine speech in Brother Muhammad's presentation. So I am in need of divine guidance with human speech, human language. And in that speech, and also in the practice of his messenger, he's also giving very, I would say, unorganic commands. Like drinking water in this sense, just to clarify my language, drinking water is an organic command. You don't need to think about it. You simply grab water and drink it. But when Creator says, don't eat food a month during the year, it's like it doesn't look very organic. It looks like it's as if an arbitrary say, don't do this and do that. As if you enter to this room, our host says that you can sit everywhere, but don't sit on this chair. I mean, it doesn't look very organic. I mean, there might be further wisdoms in it, but at first sight, it doesn't look that much familiar.
It's very controversial. It's promising, so I'll have the controversy. I mean, what I understand from worship, Buddhi, is nothing to do with commands or anything, but recognizing and acknowledging my Creator.
Yes.
Solely.
Yes. Yeah. And we will come to that. I mean, this would be. So let's. Yeah. Yeah. So, how do I really appreciate or understand my maker? What does it really mean? And yeah, I guess we talked about this. Why shall I follow commands, though? Because the verse was saying that you should follow commands so that you attain God consciousness. So just to put one thing in between, I guess next slide is yours, right? So, to my understanding, apparently after attending so many discussions, still, as I'm not able to recognize my maker when drinking water, it looks like things are not automatic. There needs to be something more. So, because my understanding is, well, if you were convinced enough, you would inevitably give yourself to your Creator anyways. In my experience, it doesn't work like this. Or at least, the word conviction in here doesn't exclusively mean if you're intellectually convinced, you will do it anyways. Because I might be convinced about, like, human seems to be very complex. And in certain aspects, I am very much convinced that the single water molecule is truly being moved all over my body by an eternal source. But this doesn't make me move. It doesn't move me to say that, well, actually, when it comes to my advisor, he is the one that moves my advisor. It doesn't work like this. Or in my personal experience, I guess I'm going to live it more when the child grows more. When it comes to my control over my child, am I going to be able to say that, like this water molecule is moving, she is also moving, she has an owner, or despite all my convictions, I would say that, no, she is mine. I am her Lord. I mean, this, as if there seems to be somewhere that I need to put my choice in. And in following slides, Abraham is going to give examples of, there are different ways of training for human. And for example, he's going to talk about this, so I should not spoil it.
So, following what he said, just to recap what he said, we, in these discussions and studies, we've come to this realization that everything is being created and that there is a doer behind the things that we see. In fact, and part of this is you are also being created. You are part of this existence. And the reality is you actually can't take yourself out of this creation. And as the third presentation yesterday, you are created with these needs, with these desires, all these things that you can't escape, or with the story of Mary and the child that she can't escape. I'm being commanded to exist in such a state. There is a command there. And similarly, I can see that all of you are also being commanded to exist. All of creation is being commanded. It's all a command. So the kun fayakun part. So we're saying that existence consists of a command. And then moving on, from the Quran, we see that there's a verse that says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, or I did not create jinn and humans except to worship me. So worship seems to be my purpose. I have been commanded to exist. It's a command. I can't disobey it. And now I'm being told that worship is the purpose of my existence. And the next step, we're reading Nursi, and Nursi says something along the lines of, he says, sincere worship, so this thing called worship that is our purpose, looks to primarily obeying his command. And also he says that numerous benefits and wisdoms within that worship can only be encouragements. And this is the crux of our presentation. This is what we're trying to understand. what does it mean for these numerous benefits and wisdoms to just be encouragements, not the primary reason that I am performing this worship? And the way I understand it right now is there's a reason you worship. There's a why you worship, and there's also what you gain from this worship. And why you worship looks to your conviction that you already have, your conviction of an absolute being, that the fact that you're being created, that the fact that you're impotent and needy, you know these things, and this is why you worship. However, what you gain from worship, these benefits and wisdoms from worship, are things like the joy and the peace and the spiritual fulfillment that you feel in this worship. Like even, I would say, when you worship, you feel like you're offloading your burden. You feel like you're in His presence. And these types of things, these are still benefits and wisdoms within that worship. But the why of it looks to, before you even perform that worship, why do you do it? Is it for that spiritual fulfillment? Is it for that joy that you're going to get out of it, for those benefits? Or is it just because you should now be acting according to this conviction that you already know that there is a creator. You already know that there's an absolute being. You already know that you're impotent and needy. You know you belong to Him. And now, based on this conviction, acting upon this thing that you know, you worship. So that's what the why should be. And we're going to try to uncover this more. But firstly, so I've been told that sincere worship is obeying His command. Now, what are His commands? How can I see His commands? And his example, which I like, is once he became a father, once he had a daughter, he said that he is able to now read mercy in the world much better. He can now see how there is mercy in a tree and a fruit, or in other different relationships, because now he experiences that mercy with his daughter. Similarly, if I want to be able to read these commands, if I want to be able to attain God consciousness, I need to somehow develop my ability to see the commands. I need to obey the command or have some type of relation with this command that now I increase my ability to see it. And explicit commands, the first commands that I do see that are explicit are the commands of the divine speech from the Prophet, such things like prayer, fasting, and giving zakat. And how we understand these is, if I want to be able to start looking at existence and start reading the commands of it, see that existence actually is a command, then I have been given these things that have been commanded explicitly so that I can train myself. It's a sort of training where if you use these correctly and understand it, these are things that you should be consciously submitting to as an order. Like you have been ordered to do these things like prayer, fasting, and zakat. And if you consciously submit in this way, then this can develop your understanding of what it means to see a command or what it means to obey a command. And eventually, as you do this, you'll start being able to see it further in the rest of creation. You'll be able to start reading things as a command, which we want because that is what it means to attain God consciousness. That is what it means to attain or live with your belief. So reading commands is living with God consciousness. So this picture is what I believe is submitting to a command or obeying a command. I'll try to understand it. I hope it doesn't make any of you feel uneasy. But so what is a command first and foremost? I guess I would say a command is when you strongly tell someone to do something. And then what is His command? Now that changes because now there's like a His there, and it's like a capital H. So to see His command, you need to first actually have knowledge of a Him or know that there is a He. And to know a Him, you have to go through this studying existence, studying creation in yourself, and see that nothing exists by itself, nothing looks to itself, everything belongs to a source, everything is being created. So you see that everything is being created, you're being commanded, there are commands. He is commanding us. And then what is obeying His command? How do I now obey His command? And how I understand this, I see obeying His command as submitting to Him to be equivalent. I see that you proclaim that you own nothing and that your existence and qualities belong to Him. And furthermore, the submission part of it is, for now, the meaning that comes to me is that you are content and accept how He creates and commands existence to be. Actually, Isra Abla yesterday was talking about this, how when you're feeling pain, and if you can accept it, or I don't remember exactly what she said, but if you can accept the pain, if you can just see that it's being created, then it's become something that you can now extract good from. I'm using my words. So this, you see that you, like for example, I'm going to go into a lot of examples to try to uncover this, but let's start from drinking water. I have this thirst. This need is created in me, I can't escape this need. It's commanded to me. I'm thirsty. I can't escape it. And what I can do with this is I can now either see that the thirst looks to my stomach or it looks to my tongue, and I want to now drink water. And this is like a command from my stomach. And I don't see my stomach as something that's worthy of being worshipped. I don't want to obey my stomach. I see that it has no qualities that look to itself. I see that it has no power or wisdom or knowledge. I don't want to obey my stomach. However, if I see that now my stomach is being created and this need within me, this need for water, my body is being created, if I can see that these are his commands and I can realize that I'm an impotent being, that I am needy and I am dependent, then now obeying the command means that I see that I'm being created as such and I need to act according to how he wants me to act. I need to act according to his order, what he wants from you, which is now to go and drink water with this kind of consciousness that you are obeying the command because he commanded you to drink water. He commanded you to be thirsty, and you see this as his command. So now you go and drink water with this consciousness, and you are now submitting to him. You are realizing that he is the one that you belong to. Another example, the car crash. This is relevant because me and Umar almost got into a pretty terrible one on the way here. Alhamdulillah, nothing happened, but it was surprising how nothing happened. But let's say an event happens like a car crash, which didn't happen, but let's say it did happen, then I'm thinking I would have to realize, or I do know that I have a Lord. I know that I have a Creator, and now a car crashes. And it's not an event that I immediately like. It's why did this happen? These are thoughts that come to me. But I do know I have a Creator. I know that He is merciful to the degree that I'm convinced, I've confirmed. I know that He's taking care of me. He's constantly looking after me throughout my life. So it seems that to act according to this conviction, this knowledge that I have of Him, I should now not retaliate and rebel. I should not start complaining and say, why did this happen? Because that would be contradicting what I know. So to act according to my convictions, according to my beliefs, it requires that I now obey this command of the crash that He's given me. Because I couldn't escape it. I am now in this crash. This existence has been commanded upon me. So now I should submit according to what I already believe is behind the command. I am already convinced that He's creating it. So I should submit to the degree that I am convinced He's creating, I should at least submit that much and not complain. So I accept how He's creating me. I say that I accept how you've created this at the first part. I obey what you've done. And as I said, submission, so far I understand as accepting how He creates and realizing that you belong to Him. So this is how a car crash can be a worship. So what is a command? Just again, further digging into it. So commands are things I can't escape, and these are like, actually the presentations before this touched on this a lot, like especially the return to the king, the needs you have, you can't escape them, even if you want to, the story of Mary. So these are like, commands could be things like needs and desires and emotions you have. Like this can be your need for success that you can't get rid of, or your desires that you just can't get rid of. They're just there. I mean, even if you don't like it, you can't get rid of them. Or let's say there's trials you go through, or calamities, or your daily life. They're just events that you're going through throughout your life, and you can't escape them. They just happen. So essentially, they're commands for you. And the important part, what makes these commands now beautiful, or let's say what makes them now meaningful, is if you're able to now see that they're His command upon to you. It's not just things themselves are commanding you. It's not that my need is now controlling me, or these trials and events are now controlling me. They're commanding me to act in a certain way. It's that I see that He is creating these things as such, and that He is commanding me. And again, this means that realizing that you're an impotent and needy being, and that you must now obey according to what He has given you. He has given me something, and I must now obey according to it. And what it means, and I can't even like disobey. If I disobeyed, it would be impossible. Like I can't disobey. My only choice is to obey. And by obeying His command, it means that you are living as He wants, and you're fulfilling your purpose of existence, which is liya'budun, so that you are worshiping. I have been commanded to exist, and our purpose of existence is now return back to Him, let's say, or worship Him. And by seeing things as His command, being conscious of it, I can now return back to Him, and I will be fulfilling the purpose of my existence. And actually, that is the greatest wisdom of seeing things as commands, is that you see, or that you are fulfilling your purpose of existence. It's not the other benefits and wisdoms and joys you can maybe extract from that worship after, because then you're doing this in like sort of like a horizontal plane almost. But if you see that you're fulfilling this purpose of existence, like you need to worship, that is the greatest wisdom behind submitting to his commands. Yeah, you had a question?
The car crash example brought this question into my world, and I would like to share it. I felt a little like this way that is it the process of believing? Is it something that I submitting versus like imposing my previous conclusion over a new event? I think there should be there should be a process, a brand new process taking place within my world with a new event, with each event, and then I can, if I am able to make sense of it, and if I am able to reach a solid conclusion, then I can submit what that event is telling me. I don't know if I was able
It makes sense to me. Okay, so my answer to that, or what I understand, is you are convinced to some degree of a creator, of his mercy, of him being a caretaker and sustainer, all of these, and you know this. And because you know this, when this action happens, before you start looking at the intricacies of it and start trying to extract the meaning of it, how does this make sense in my life, what good is there in this, before you even begin this process, the first step to realize is that he commanded you to exist as such. This person, or this being that you are convinced about, that you already know exists, has commanded you to exist as such. So the first step is you say, I accept this creation you have given me. I obey what you have given me. I submit to you, like I realize I belong to you. And then what comes after this is you start looking at the wisdom in it. And then you start looking at the mercy in it. You start seeing all these other things within it. And actually, he will touch upon this later. This is a cycle. Because of belief, you submitted and you did this worship of obeying. And because you obeyed, later on you're going to see now the wisdom in that event of that car crash. And as you see more wisdom in this, you become more convinced of his names of being the wise one, or his names of compassionate. And then the next time something happens, you will submit with a greater conviction to him. So it's a cycle that feeds it feeds each other. Does that answer your question?
So, we don't, this is related to Brother Muhammad's comment, we don't like obeying commands. So the word command has some negative connotation because we want to exercise free will, and the one who gave us free will must respect our free will, right? So in that sense, I can't be a command follower. So I can see the negative connotation. But I think in this context, in the context you're describing it, we have to see obeying to the command of the Creator as acting on the first step, which is all those convictions. I have full conviction on the fact that I'm being created by one who has power over everything, right? Now, what do I do? Right? So, in this context, I think we need to view obeying his command as acting on that conviction. What do I do? Right? So, either I follow the commands of other things in this world, other people, other agents. I say I don't want to follow their commands. Okay? Then what do am I a free agent? If I say I don't follow anyone's command, what do I do then? Do I know how to use myself? One verse says, your discussion reminded me of a verse, I just looked it up. فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. Be steadfast, straight, as you are commanded. Right? Be straight. Well, how am I? Be straight means in any quality I have on me, I have to use it for the exact purpose it's given to me. We say in Fatiha, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Guide us to the straight. We don't know straight path. Guide us. We have to seek guidance. We don't know how to use all the things that are given to us. So when I obey the command, I declare, you have given these to me, you need to guide me. So that's my obeying his command.
Exactly.
Right?
That's something.
Just to highlight, although he said it, but I guess just part of repeating it throughout the presentation, the main gist of the presentation is I need to observe existence as a kun fayakun, like command of kun. This is the end goal. This is taqwa, this is living with belief. All the same word, same meaning, expressed with different words. Okay? Seeing existence as kun fayakun, living with belief, attaining taqwa, all the same. Or submission. On the other hand, we are questioning if the command that comes from speech, such as do fasting, is a training for me to be able to observe commands more easily. Because in my personal life, I am now obeying a command, and this will train me, like the example of mercy. I am not in my personal life trained in terms of seeing mercy. In the example of worship, of command of worship for fasting, if I train myself to obey a command, in the case of a crash, whatever, at least we are expecting that. This should make it easier for me to see the crash as an end as well, as a command as well. So in this sense, my previous training is likely to help me when something unexpected happens, so that now I apply my previous training into this new problem, such as in your college education, your professor assigns you totally synthetic problems. They are not real problems, but they are problems so that you get trained for solving, problem solving, and when it comes to real life, with that training you will be able to solve a real problem. So in this sense, the type of worship we are talking about in here is like pretty simple, salat, saum, whatever, fasting or prayer. And the main purpose of them, and this is again going to be repeated a lot, the main purpose of that worship, the primary purpose, main purpose, not the added value, the main one, is to get trained to see amr, the existence as an amr. After graduation, when I get out of prayer, my goal is to see existence as amr. The Creator is inviting me to prayer then, saying that this is a synthetic, if you like, command. Practice yourself of what it means to, I am now giving you two choices, as you were saying. So if would you like to accept it or reject it? So still my choice is not taken away from me. But as if I am given this ego, for example, he says, I give you this option to say that I am the owner of my daughter or not. So, and he says that you know that you are not the owner, but still I didn't take the choice from your hand. I want you to practice this and say that, okay, I give this to you as well, it's not mine. So in this sense, obey.
I really like what Mohammed Said said from a different perspective I'm taking it, that imposing what you already know to a new situation, you said, this is not something desired. I guess we should follow these with these ideas, concepts as well. Like when we hear a word like comment, and I shouldn't impose all these, cultural background, all these political ideas, or people use the comments to suppress me or whatever. So comment is something bad, or comment is something negative. Instead of taking it as, I guess this is what I understand, at least what you said, Yusuf, as something related to this kun feyekun. If I try to see command from this perspective, rather than a political perspective, let's say, it becomes something extremely positive for me. Like, when I climb a tree, for instance, I wouldn't like the tree disappear in the middle way and I fall down. Nobody likes it, right? When I walk on the road, I wouldn't like the road become something, I don't know, the floppy, and I fall down. I don't like it. I like an order in my creation, in my life, sorry. I like an order in the creation. I want to know that when I climb a tree, the tree will follow an order, a command. Every particle or everything in the tree wouldn't, act by themselves, but following a command that I can read, that I can act on. I would know that I can climb a tree. I will, as we were discussing between the session, I will have this hope that I can climb the tree, I can walk on the road. So I guess seeing the creation as a command is something I need. Because otherwise I cannot rely on it. As you were saying, Abdurrahman, like seeing the creation as his command. That is something I can rely, I can say, yes, this is the life I want to live. Built by commands. And the same way, I ask myself, like, where am I in this life? In this web of commands? What am I commanded? So I guess this question comes naturally. It's not external that somebody there, telling me do this or do that. And in this way, it doesn't become like on the opposite side of free will. So I'm not sure, it's something against free will because I have this will somehow working, freely working, just like, I see freely, I have free sight. The same way I have free will. It doesn't mean I have an independent will or independent sight, independent from him. It means it's free, working. So I have this free will, and I don't know how to utilize it. So I need some commands, some orders in my life, in this creation, which will also give a meaning of my will as well. Without commands, at least maybe this is the way I see my life. Without commands, without his commands that I can rely, life is unbearable to me.
Just short comment, because you said the crux is the goal we want, or you said we want is God consciousness in every moment. And you are interested in how following commands like fasting and prayer could be seen as training for 24/7 God consciousness. So there what comes to mind is there has to be some relation between the training and the actual. So if I am, let's say doing practicing soccer for the real match, the training must be of the nature of what I'm going to do. In which case, I would say that, so maybe wisdom may not be the word, but if I am looking to be truthfully or convincingly or joyfully conscious of God in everything, I might have to see the truth in prayer and fasting and other commands to be it a training. You know what I mean? If I just say that I can do it, but I can do it, but if I want to do it as a training for God consciousness, then there has to be some element of God consciousness in those 3 or 4 practice, because you're saying it's a practice. So, which means if I do the prayer and fasting as simply, or let's say not simply, but a wonderful command, like I said, command is a very good word in this way. So command, I do, but without seeing the truth in it, without seeing God's consciousness in it, experiencing God consciousness through it, then can it still be a training for the God consciousness the rest of life? So that's the point.
So, actually, this is the reason that I was giving the disclaimer at the beginning, since I was overwhelmed with this word surrender.
Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe they did, maybe they didn't back in the day, saying that surrender no matter what. This shouldn't be understood as I'm understanding it right now. So in this presentation, the point is not to say that there shouldn't or cannot be any wisdom, whatever. But what I am understanding from this is, especially in this age, we are now prioritizing wisdom aspect of things over the command aspect of it. Now what I'm trying to understand from here is, the number one purpose in this one was to be trained in terms of seeing the commandness of it. But the Creator, being all-wise, puts wisdom in the commands as well. They are not like separate, but they are coming all in the same, if you like, plate. But the primary aspect, which I am neglecting for personal reasons such as since my childhood, I was seeing that you have to pray, you have to do it like this, and during my rebellious years, let's say, I said, who the heck are you to tell me which way are you? I mean, I don't want to do it, and since I'm allergic to this aspect of it, let's say, now I'm saying that after somebody started explaining its purpose, well, now it becomes meaningful for me, so this is it, I said. But now I'm saying that let's revisit the idea, because I abandoned the command aspect of it in favor of wisdom aspect of it because of my lifetime. In my lifetime, I was addressed with the command aspect of it in a way. But in a later phase of my life, somebody talked about its wisdom aspect of it, and I said, now it makes sense. But I never reconsidered the command aspect of it, although I was supposed to get both training from the same action of prayer. Now, the suggestion in here is, and especially since we started with the description of Nursi saying that the sincerity in worship is, you do it because just you were commanded. The wisdom's part is like the additional part that comes on top of it. So I'm trying to make sense of what does the author was trying to say in here. So it looks like the main gist from that perspective of worship is, through this action, I am actually starting to get trained saying that, because I'm already convinced that he is the owner. So, for example, if I enter to here and I say he is the host, and he says, you can drink everything, but don't drink this one, let's say. And if I'm convinced about this, he might have several wisdoms for telling me not to drink it, but also it might additionally mean that as a sign of him being the host, he says, don't drink this. And to train myself to say that, okay, I am acknowledging that you are the host, and as a sign, I'm not going to drink this. Then this aspect in here, in the existence, when the Creator says, don't eat for a month, yes, definitely there are wisdoms for not eating within a month, but just the very fact that I am not eating because I am commanded by the owner of the food not to eat it, and I am already convinced that I am not the owner, but now I need to use my free will to say that, yes, I am not only with my intellect, with all my being, I am admitting that this is your command, and through this command relationship, now that I'm getting to familiarize myself what it means to obey a command, then I can see that as a tree giving me fruit is also a command in there, so on and so forth. This concept of command can propagate in my world for the rest of the existence. I mean, too much repetition, I know, but I guess just to clarify.
Just to expand on what you said, Adam being forbidden to approach a certain tree, nothing special about the tree, but to teach Adam that he has to act under command. So when he deals with other trees, he asks himself, is this that tree? Meaning, do I have permission to approach this tree? I am being commanded to not eat pork, yeah? We need a context to exercise that we don't own ourselves or any qualities. I see meat. Is it pork? Meaning, do I have permission? Because I don't want to transgress the command, yeah? Because I don't own my taste. Right? So, we need several contexts. We need a context for every sensation, every kind of qualities seen. I'm looking, but I am commanded to not look to certain things. When I look, it is just a reminder to tell me, when I look, do I have permission to look at that thing, right? So establishing that understanding of, do I have permission to use my quality right now in this certain instance, right? And this is everything at kun fayakun. Everything I look at the universe, everything obeys command. Kun fayakun, right? Only the human being is given the free will. And the human being looks at everything obeying command, and using free will obeys the command. That's why it's the highest form of worship, right? So free will obeying command doesn't go against free will, rather free will makes human beings obeying command, it increases the human beings obeying the command. So,
I guess in this regard, it would be very nice. We just thought of it recently. We didn't study this verse, but when the Creator says, Creator asked for the skies and the earth to obey His command, willingly or unwillingly. They responded saying, we are coming it true willingly. We didn't discuss too much about this, but after these sort of discussions, we realized that the word amr is really heavily used in Quran in different contexts. So, and our quest in here is, can my obeying of command is a training for just the bare minimum fact of what is amr is, what is a command is, and what does it mean to obey a command, so much so that I see drinking of water as command, meaning that God consciousness now is in my drinking of water, with my car crash, with my advisor, whatever. So this very bare minimum and basic aspect of worship, in my experience, was overlooked. Because I was faced with this aspect of it in an unpleasant way or in an unpleasant time of my life. Later on, different and more shiny aspects started appearing to me, appealing to my intellect, which is, in this age, we are more interested in the wisdom part of things. And therefore, the other part is being either ignored, or we don't want to touch it, or sugarcoat it, whatever, because it's not that much pleasant. So this is why we are dealing at this bare minimum and very basic aspect of it. So nothing to sugarcoat.
Could you go back to the verse that you were showing?
Which one?
Something is bothering me. Because the verse says, first look at the creation.
Yeah, so we are.
So that is the command. That is his command. The way I create is the command.
So, yes.
But we're getting confused with two different things. I feel like he says, my command is the way I create. You look outside, that's the rain. I create rain. That's how I create rain. Or that's how I give you fruit. It's like it has to go through steps of water goes in the trees, go to leaves, photosynthesis. That's my command. And I expect you to recognize it.
Yes.
But once you keep saying, okay, now go to prayer and practice for recognizing this, it doesn't make sense to me. Because he says, first recognize that this is how I create, and then come thank me.
So thank you for this. Yes, I agree with that. And this is why I guess we need a lot of repetition here. Let's say after 10 years of discussions about how the existence is happening, still I am saying that there's something missing. Not to say that seeing this aspect in existence shouldn't be done. No, definitely not that. But my question comes right after this. This is why the second part of the second verse is, although you know all of these, still you might be ascribing partners to the Creator. This part we are focusing on. Not to say that without understanding who the Creator is, whatnot, go and do prayer so that you get trained for it. Definitely not. 100% agree. But let's say, I mean, since people in here are attending those discussions for at least 10 years, I guess, despite that, and knowing that, like attaining a knowledge of the Creator, now it's raining, the one that gives the rain and whatnot, still, when it comes to my personal dealings, I don't see it there. So now I'm trying to see this verse saying that, how am I going to attain God consciousness and not ascribe partner to the Creator, although I know that He is my Creator? And one aspect in here is urbudu. And we are saying that urbudu, like worship, can be taken in two ways. The first one is, as you said, like if you go to the next slide again. So two types of command in the existence. One is drinking water. It can be a worship, and this is our goal anyways. We would like to understand how drinking water is a worship, right? And in our discussions, we are trying to arrive at this conclusion, saying that can water own itself, or can water go to your eye when you drink it by itself? Yeah, it cannot. Perfect. This should be definitely studied. But although I study this, still, when I drink water, I'm not there yet. It doesn't click. So this second part, command that comes from speech, might be a tool to train me to see that in practical life. Because before my daughter was born, I could have talked about mercy for hours. But now, when I talk about mercy, I am feeling what I mean. So likewise, if I am conscious again, because I can do worship unconsciously, that this is given. I mean, not to say about those boundary conditions, I mean, definitely they are there. But if I am conscious that, there's this important aspect of fasting, which means I do fasting because my owner said don't eat. That's simple. This aspect of it is also for training me to see the existence as a command. So this aspect of it, not to say that the other one is less important, not important, definitely not. So,
This is really excellent points. I just wanted to say, maybe this is a very minor nuance, but maybe it's easy to talk about these two type of commands when we take the example of fasting. It gets a bit more complicated with prayer, because prayer does not just include the intention to pray and then some movements, but it also we are articulating certain things. So insofar as there's that kind of content, it can't be mechanical. Prayer doesn't mean mumble these words, mean them. So then it gets a bit complicated. What do you mean when you just want us to mumble? You don't mean that. So it's clearer with the fasting, because fasting has the intention to fast, and then the remaining is just an act of not eating. And in that act of not eating, there's something transformative. It's not just about you thinking about benefits of fasting, but just saying 2 minutes left for the star, and I have experienced hunger, my neediness, and so on, everything. But then there's extra 2 minutes of waiting. It isn't just now I understand my weakness and so on. That 2 minutes also, that command, I am obeying command. I'm told that you can't eat, even if intentionally you can't break the fast before 2 minutes. So that obeying is transformative, and there's something in itself, apart from the benefits of fasting, that you want to highlight. If we want to talk about the daily prayer, for instance, there's a part in it there, in that I am busy and I really don't want to get up this early, or I don't want to do this at this time, and there's a kind of, but I will do it because my Creator said so. But in addition, in the prayer, there's a content being articulated, right? I mean, you remember those passages where Nursi also talks about when you sit in the Tahiyya and you are declaring there's only one God, which means nothing can harm you or benefit you other than Him. And that becomes a training when you go out there in the world, when there's a car crash. If you said it in your prayer, there's only one source of creation, it's you, and you're merciful and wise. If you said it in that intention, then it becomes easier when the car crash happens. It's shocking, terrifying, whatever, it's negative feelings, but then you say, well, wait a second, I just prayed and I just declared, reminded myself that whatever happens from him, and there's wisdom too, and I will surrender to it. And so there is that organic link as well between saying yes to other commands in creation, like misfortune and so on, and saying yes articulating yes in the prayer.
But I see that there's a connection, but isn't that a conclusionary statement when you say that in your prayer, in your sitting, saying, I see that there is no harm or benefit that comes from anything?
I declare, yeah.
Declaring based on what you've experienced in the world, not based on what you experience in the prayer. So I understand that prayer refreshed this idea, but it's still a kind of conclusionary statement. What goes on in the prayer is educating you from itself, from what itself is saying, but inherently, but it's coming from what you already are experiencing, and maybe you are just becoming consistent with what's going on in the world and declaring it there. The only, I think, concern I have is that to say that the worship side or these things are the trainings, give this notion that you can do a lot of it and become more and more educated about things. And in my experience, it's not been that way. It's always been the other. The more I reflect on what's going on outside, the more my prayers increase. But doing a lot of prayers doesn't necessarily increase.
Yeah, so I guess definitely, for example, doing prayer without being conscious of what you are doing, no matter how much you do, there are such cases for sure. I mean, definitely. So nothing to debate really in there about this. But what we are trying to see in here is it a linear relationship or a circular relationship? As much as I am convinced, I am expressing myself, prayer is my conclusion in this regard, very correct. But also, my conviction about I don't own myself, therefore I am obeying to a command. If I take it from this perspective, prayer becomes my training. So it's both a expressing of my conclusions, but also it's a training for something else. So it's not exclusively one of them.
But how can you accept you don't belong to yourself without actually observing?
Yeah, there's nothing about without. Agreed.
That's going to be the conclusion. You jump
Yes.
into the conclusion and
No,
then
no.
say, this conclusion will be my training.
No. So this is why maybe I guess fasting example is good. Through my studying of existence for last 10 years, so I am talking about myself, let's say. I am studying these topics for 10 years, I am studying existence, and I already concluded to an extent, not ultimately, that I don't own myself. But still my Creator invites me to fasting. I already got the point, God. I mean, why you want me to suffer hunger? So as if there is something in me, because the reason I would like to emphasize is, although we never speak this vocally, we think like intellectual conviction is the conviction. It is only part of the story, if we would like to admit it to ourselves. Maybe we say that, no, brother, it's not only intellectually. Generally, this is what we do in our discussions. This is why I think fasting is recommended, or not even commanded, forget about recommended. Fasting is commanded because as if my Creator knows me, saying that although intellectually you very well know that you don't own anything and I am the owner of the food, but let me teach another aspect in you, if you would like to call it heart, if you would like to call it nafs, whatever. Let's call it something else in me. I need a different type of training for that aspect of me to learn and admit that, yes, you are truly the owner. So what takes me to the edge of fasting is my initial conviction. 100% agreed with you. I need to be intellectually convinced as well that everything belongs to Him. This existence has an owner. And then I will go to His speech, then to the messenger, and messenger will tell me. There's a long journey for sure, granted. I mean, Not saying that this is not necessary or not to undermine it, definitely not. But just the opposite, saying that we are undermining this one in the favor of the other. So let's put things into their proper location. So this aspect of prayer also has a value. Not to say that this is like more important, less important, but this part of it was specifically underlined and has a value inherently. This is the point. I mean, nothing to say more than that, honestly.
And one of the things it doesn't make sense to me is that you're forgetting that life is dynamic. Once you say, oh, I have all these years of learning, I'm done with this, it means you didn't learn.
No,
Because
but
life is dynamic. Now you're seeing with your child. Every day is something new. There will be ups and downs. That is why every day you need to observe his command. And then every day he says 5 times a day, how much did you observe? Come talk to me. 5 times a day you go talk to him. The quality of the way you talk to him differs based on how much you actually appreciated and accepted that all those commands
Yes.
were done for you to recognize him.
yes.
Once you say I'm already there, then going forward
No.
will be always like, yeah, more prayers, more fasting.
So again, yes,
It feels stressing to me.
you're right, but this is not what I am trying to mean. And this is why at the very beginning I was making the disclaimer, you were not here. 3 years ago, I attended a retreat in which there were a lot of surrender, and I get overwhelmed in the negative sense of the word. Because I always understood it back in the day, that they were saying that don't think about any of these, just surrender. And it didn't make sense to me, honestly. Maybe it was not meant like this, but this is how I understood it. So I would like to be understood the same way. Not to say that you shouldn't be doing this and that. I mean, to say the least, I am having at least 3 discussions a week nowadays. And I'm not doing it because I see it obsolete. I see it necessary. But I am saying that still something is missing in there. So on top of it, what is going to be not only a conclusion of something, not only, but I am saying it is a conclusion, the prayer is my conclusion, but plus, or fasting, but plus, it should be a training aspect as well. Is it this why my Creator says, you worship, therefore you attain the God consciousness, and not to say that this doesn't mean see the existence as worship. This meaning is there, not to say that this is not there. But I am just taking it the very bare minimum meaning, saying that like fasting is a worship. What does it help me? How does it help me to attain God consciousness? This is the very simple question. So in this sense, I am trying to see it as obeying the command is it a tool to make me see the existence as a command as well? So this aspect of it, not to undermine anything else, not to say that, no, don't think, brother, just go and do your worship and you're going to learn. Not any of these, really not saying this. But just saying that the other aspect we pretend, or since we never consider it, because like the imam in the mosque said that, don't think, you do pray or you read these words from Arabic, although you don't understand Arabic, your problems are going to be solved, which doesn't make any sense, agreed. But since this likens this one, so we are being categorically against anything as such. But in here, it looks like there's a training of free will, if you like, or ego, in the sense that obeying a command as a declaration of, I don't own myself. So in this sense, submission, in this sense, surrendering.
I really understood you. You emphasized. Okay. I have a comment when you're ready.
Okay, so how much minutes? So we have 14 minutes. It's up to you.
So the last 10 minutes I'll speed through, hopefully. You please give your comment.
I just flagged that I understood you, I think, but we should remember, I should remember that my taking training could result in the same disappointment in the end that happens to me when I think of 10 years of intellectual concluding and trust in that training to produce a result. Our idols are very different. Our training can become our idol. we can put our trust in my training X regime, looking the prayer as commanded, doing because it's commanded, fasting because it is commanded, and now I might put my trust in this training and take the result of it as the result of this training. If I do, I will definitely get a slap and say, you thought this training is the cause of your God consciousness. We have to be careful in that point that neither my observation of the water coming down and saying that there is a creator is the cause or something trustworthy as a source of any joy I get. Neither my commandedness of the prayer and my training should be or would be the cause of my increased cost consciousness. Because I'm just raising the question that I cannot trust that. If some God consciousness is produced, I have to ask from which it came. So that's question. It's a different kind of problem, but we should remember this problem because we go from here. Okay, 10 years of intellectualizing doesn't work, and then 20 years of commandedness of the prayer may not also work. If I'm trusting that training to produce the result. That's what I want to say.
Justified by grace alone.
Little bit.
But I would to think about how expressing the conclusion is something more than. Let's say I made a mistake and I hurt somebody's feelings, and I recognize and I'm embarrassed about it, and the person is in front of me.
quickly touching on your point, I think there is a lot of benefit in expressing the conclusion, because the conclusion is not something I automatically express. Actually, I need to still choose to express that conclusion, still act according to what I have concluded. So there's great benefit in that. And alhamdulillah, we actually touched basically every topic, I think, in the discussions that we had. But quickly, just going through the rest of the slides, I was going to actually go into these fastings and prayers that we were talking about. And just in my words, how I understand it is in these rituals of fasting, because this, I want this to be practical. And for myself too, I'm trying to implement it. I'm trying to now, we're saying that these rituals, these things I've been commanded to do, they're there for a reason, so that I can start training my idea of submitting to Him and start reading existence as God's commands. So now I want to start implementing these. And I've been trying the past, I guess, since before this discussion, before this retreat, and it's hard. So it's going to take time. But to make it practical, what I guess, using Nursi's words of how sincerity in worship is to obey the command, even when it comes to something like worship, fasting. So I am convinced already. I am starting from this basis of a knowledge. I have read existence. I have come to some belief. And then I see that my Creator has commanded me to fast. And the sincerity there is now because I see that this Creator is worthy of being worshipped, because He's worthy of being listened to. I now fast. I choose to fast. And the benefits in fasting, such as realizing that I'm impotent, realizing that I need Him, realizing that even like I have this ego or thing that needs to be trained. These are benefits and wisdoms within that fasting, which will then reinforce my confirmation of His names of wisdom, and all these other, it'll reinforce my belief in Him, which for the next day of fasting, then I will fast with more conviction. But at the first step is now practicing or submitting to that conviction or that conclusion you have of Him already, and obeying by fasting, choosing to fast. Similarly in prayer, usually, like just giving an example for myself, in prayer, I find that if I'm not significantly conscious of the verses I'm reading, or if I'm not conscious of like the movements I'm making and the zikrs I'm saying, or like when I'm like bowing down, like what all of this means, if I'm not conscious of it, it's very difficult, or I find that my prayer is not so valuable. It's not very valuable because I'm trying to be conscious of the verses I'm reading and things like that. But I see that I was skipping this idea that at the first step, really what consciousness I should be aiming for in prayer is this idea that I'm submitting to this command to pray that He has given me. He's given me these rituals, and I need to now submit. I need to now see that I'm impotent, I'm needy, or I need to, like this previous conclusions that I have, that He is my Creator, I belong to Him, He has created me, I don't have this independent existence, I can't just live as I want. So now, in the beginning, when I first take takbir, that is the consciousness, the first step of consciousness I should really be aiming for. And I find this consciousness is slightly easier as a first step to hit than really understanding all the verses I'm reading, which is, of course, very beneficial. I'm not taking anything away from that. But this idea of submission, this idea of obeying a command as the first step, so that eventually it will train me. Eventually I will start being able to look at existence as commands and start reading, start being God conscious. I find it to be helpful. And also, now coming to the benefit and wisdoms of it, not just obeying the command part. So as you do more worshiping, as you now live with worship, Nursi claims this. He says that now you'll be able to see that all of creation is actually worshiping. It'll increase this, as you, like, he says one of the wisdoms of prayer being commanded is so that now you can see that the rest of creation is also taking part in this glorification, taking part in this prayer, and of worshiping God. So similarly, when it's hard for me to worship more, as you start seeing, as you start submitting more and obeying more, you start seeing that when these trees, the branches rise up, it almost looks like they're calling to God. They're crying to God, asking Him. Or when you see that a moon is reflecting light, it's not actually attributing the light to itself. It's saying that I am a reflection. I am not the owner of these qualities. Or when you see the heart is steadily pumping, constantly pumping, and giving you life, giving you blood, the heart, it seems, is not attributing those to itself. The heart is actually reflection, saying that I'm a reflection. It is worshiping. It is glorifying. And the more you worship, the more you can see these. And also, one of like the biggest benefits I had from these discussions was I see it also with me. Generally, I'm reading existence. I'm looking around me. I'm looking at the trees, nature, all of these things, and seeing God's reflections. But then I realized I should need to also do some internal reflection as well. I need to also be internally conscious. I see his manifestations on myself as well. I see his compassion, his mercy, his care. All of these are on me as well. So I see the rest of creation is glorifying. They have all of these bounties, or they're being given, like a tree is being clothed with leaves, and it's now glorifying. Similarly, I'm being given leaves, clothed with bounties. I need to ask myself, am I also glorifying? Do I need to not also submit back to him internally, not just looking externally, but in prayer I should also, or in worship, I should internally see that I'm being given all of these things. And that it is now also, just as the rest of creation is now coming together in a circle of glorification, they're all glorifying, I should also take part in this circle. I should also join them. And that is actually just a beautiful worldview, if you can achieve that, just to join the rest of creation in glorification.
So I guess just to reiterate what we have spoken so far, we repeated a lot, but once more for final time. So again, we were trying to see how am I going to live with my belief throughout my life, at moments of my life, and which we used interchangeably with the word taqwa, God consciousness, submission. We used them, all of them interchangeably to mean the same thing, more or less. And this verse is saying, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So you worship your Lord who is such and such and such, so that you attain God consciousness. The such and such and such part is, we discussed that all those discussions, whatever, we are trying to attain this, and we should do that. We should read the universe. But what does it mean that u'budu in here? So, and the next part, الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا. So the Creator is saying that He is the one, your Lord, the one that educates you. If we take Rabb as an educator, creator, He is the one that's also educating the existence, the rain and the foods and everything. And then at the end of the verse says, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, implying as if, saying that although you know all of these, it is still possible that you are going to ascribe partners to Him. If you would like to avoid that, then u'budu, so that you attain God consciousness. So this aspect of worship that we would like to highlight. And using Nursi's terminology then, if we go to the, let's skip this one. I'll skip this one. Summaries. Okay, so in Nursi's terminology, he says that the purpose or the main reason to worship is because it's commanded. İbadetin illeti emirdir. The illa, the main reason for worship is command. This aspect we highlighted and what it really means, because it doesn't make sense. You do just because you obey. It sounds like it's very, as if a king is trying to say that, okay, do it because I just said it. But in a sense, yes, truly, this aspect of worship, which is really at the very background of it, might be overlooked in favor of focusing on the wisdom. Not to say that disregard wisdom. No, let's also not forget that this is the main chunk in there, and also benefit from this one, or even prioritize this one because it's like very habitual. I would like to make God consciousness a habit of my life. Therefore, this aspect of worship, and then definitely the wisdom aspect of worship in the rest of my life. So, yeah, I guess this is it.
I do. You should probably just say this and you should say it.
Okay. So, and one more thing. So this ibadah, the worship is like belief leads to worship, like a linear thing. If I take it exclusively like this, what I might end up doing is, well, then I need to attain a perfect consciousness, therefore I'm going to do this, whatever. And then rather in here, what we are trying to see is, it's a circle. So with whatever conviction I achieve, I do express myself and also get into training through this worship, this aspect of worship, which in turn increases my consciousness, increases my belief, my conviction. So it's like a cycle. It's not only a linear thing, which means, yeah, once I reach nirvana, it doesn't really work like this. Which, and I guess this was the one of the slides that we skipped. So because of our background, again, in our life, maybe people were just vocal people strong in our community used to say that you should worship just because. Don't think, don't question, whatever. And if you go and ask to an imam about some questions you have, brother, just read those verses and don't get into those websites, this and that. And since we are very much bothered with this tongue, we are not maybe benefiting from this aspect of worship. So we are just saying that let's reconsider this aspect of it. This is why at the very beginning we put the title in the question form, not to sound very like, okay, we solved the problem. Maybe can this be the aspect of worship that the Creator is asking Urbudu in there? Definitely there are different multiple ways of understanding what Urbudu means. Maybe this is one of them. So this was our take. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة